Funding for this program was provided by the Kentucky Heritage Land Fund and viewers like you.
Our lifestyle has become so hurried. I can't think of a better blood pressure medicine than sitting in a canoe, floating down the Green River, or one of the other beautiful streams that's protected by the Wild Rivers program, and it sure is a lot less expensive. We have to slow down. The river teaches us that. The river is on its own time scale. The river rises and falls as it will. And try as we may to control it, the river continues to show us and prove to us that she is operating under her own devices, and we must adjust our schedules, our lifestyles to accommodate her. The Wild River, continues to flow, and all of the activity on the river and in the river continues as we go about our busy daily lives.
Our fast-paced lives drive us past treasures concealed by trees and rocks. They're the wild rivers, so much a part of the Kentucky landscape that we sometimes forget they exist. The fact that we have these places left to discover is thanks to a piece of legislation called the Kentucky Wild Rivers Act. So why not slow down and take a look?
The Kentucky Wild Rivers program, it came about in the early 70s, and it has evolved and grown with time. The Wild Rivers Act established certain corridors that were determined in 1972 as being wild river corridors. And those are areas where the land use has not been affected by human activities so much as many other areas have been. And the basic concept is, by protecting these precious jewels, you are preserving something that speaks not just emotionally to people, because it's part of our roots, it's part of our history, but you're also preserving something that has a scientific value to it. And I don't know that people recognize the various values of the Wild Rivers program, but it is not just an emotional or inspirational kind of quality. It is scientific quality as well. It's something that we recognize that once it's gone, it's gone. There's no getting it back. And so we need to preserve those things so that we have these values for ourselves and for future generations.
The way the program actually works is that once these corridors are designated as wild and scenic rivers, it restricts the land use that can be done within these corridors. So what that means is that when you get in a corridor, which is a mix of public and private land, the corridor itself, or the riparian area on each side of the stream, has to remain as sort of a natural community. That's supposed to enhance water quality as well as give more of a scenic appeal to these wild and scenic rivers. The program itself ultimately designated 9 river segments and stream segments throughout Kentucky as wild and scenic rivers. Most of these rivers are in the eastern part of the state, except for Green River and Mammoth Cave, which is over in the south central portion of the state. There's very few remaining intact natural stream communities in the state. Aquatic resources are impacted heavily by the land uses in their watersheds. So being able to put these restrictions on the stream itself, and then also be able to acquire land within that watershed, enhances water quality for several endangered species of aquatic organisms. Most people don't have a clue that this program exists, which is a real shame. Most people don't have a clue that a lot of these areas exist. And that's what we're trying to do now, is kind of get the word out a little bit better to get people to realize that in order to see some of the beautiful places that the state has, and also to look at some of the organisms that most people, when they're thinking of endangered species, are thinking that they're going over to a jungle somewhere in a different continent. Well, there's several endangered species that are right in your back door that you can go out and see what sort of habitat they're living in.
But when I think of legislation such as the Kentucky Wild Rivers Act, I think it probably grew out of a love that the people of the Commonwealth have for running water. We're so blessed in the state of Kentucky with more miles of running water than any other state besides Alaska. And just about anywhere you go in Kentucky, you're within a stone's throw of a stream. And for us Kentuckians, these streams are living things. They're not just rocks and trees and water, but they're living, breathing organisms. And I don't know about other folks, but for me, when I'm on a river, I feel more alive. And people oftentimes don't realize how alive rivers truly are. When you float down a river, when you wade in a stream, it truly is a living museum. And you know, people pay many dollars. There are millions of people that visit aquariums every year. And they only need to come and visit their local stream or local river to be able to have some of those experiences firsthand.
The Wild River Corridors are a unique blend of public and private lands, held together and added to by the Kentucky Wild Rivers program that is overseen by the Kentucky Division of Water and coordinator Zach Couch.
Most people are amazed that Kentucky has these areas to go to. Everybody's heard of Cumberland River and Cumberland Falls. A few people, if they've been to Mammoth Cave, have heard of the Green River and then also the Red River around the Red River Gorge area. But some of these other areas don't get the publicity that those do. So you'll see some of the prettiest places in the state with this program. Bad Branch, which is over in Letcher County, has a 60-foot waterfall, a pristine mountain stream, gin clear water flowing through nice rounded rocks. Martin's Fork over near Cumberland Gap is the same way, with these huge sandstone outcroppings, sort of an entrenched palisade type stream. Yet again, just crystal clear waters, stuff that most people travel out of the state to see, you can actually find here in your back door.
Well, in Kentucky, you know, we have about 25 million acres in the state of Kentucky. Well over 90% are privately owned and include everything from houses and farms to developed areas, cities and towns, things like that. So very little of Kentucky is left in its natural state. And so our goal is to protect as much as we have left for future generations to enjoy, and as well to protect some of the natural things that are out there that are in decline. We lose, I forget what the exact number is, but we lose something like 100 acres per day in Kentucky to development. And so we're just trying to keep what's left out there naturally in good shape and in the public hands.
The 9 river corridors comprise a total of 130 river miles and over 26,000 acres of land. Each new property adds another small parcel to a growing project dedicated to preserving the wild places of Kentucky for future generations. The Wild Rivers program is administered through the Kentucky Division of Water and encompasses the management, acquisition, and conservation of the individual river corridors. Summer and a new property just added to the Wild Rivers program brings a team of aquatic biologists from the Division of Water to one of the most diverse ecosystems in the state. They're taking what they call a snapshot of the Green River to determine the health of the animals in and around the areas, as well as the quality of the water contained in the river.
When we acquire these new Wild Rivers tracts, we get to go out and actually do some inventory to find out what fauna we have there. And we also collected some water chemistry to let us know generally what was happening with the stream there.
We were looking for mussels. They are the best water quality indicators that exist because they live there, they're sedentary. They can live, on average, 35 years of age. They can live up to be 100 years of age, some species. So those in particular give us a really good idea of what the water quality is like there. And if we find just dead shell material and no live mussels, that's not a good sign. In the Green River, that's the best system that we have in the state, and probably really in, some say, the world. The Green River is a special place.
But we canoed down from an access point down to this section. There was no road access. Once we canoed in, we broke into our teams, and some of the teams worked on mussels and bugs and fish, and we more or less rotated throughout the reach of the river. We rotated what we were looking at and where, and basically just writing down, documenting what we found.
We have to have riffles, which are fast-flowing areas where the rocks are up, breaking the surface. That's where you collect the best bugs. So we usually give clearance to the aquatic entomologists because they need to get into the riffle first. So the fish people defer to them because we don't want to mess up the habitat. Then we go downstream and we start collecting fish with the backpack shocker. You want to do that so that you don't stir up. You want to be able to see. You have to net the fish. So if you can't see, it's very difficult. And then we do the seining later after we get finished with the electrofishing techniques. And often Mark Vogel, our bug guy, he has the luxury of going and looking for shells while he's sampling because he's looking at the substrate. While we're looking at fish, we're honed in on the fishes. But if we're going to specifically sample mussels, then we all get our face in the water, and that's the easiest way to find those.
This site is very typical for the Green River. We found about 20 species of mussels. Historically, for mussels, there were about 70 species in the Green River. Some of those are extirpated, just completely gone. Throughout the Green River, there may be more like 40 species, and several of those are federally endangered.
I think we found over 18 or 19 live species of mussels, and you just don't find that anywhere in Kentucky anymore. That was very uncommon.
Without the kind of the work we do, we would not understand if water bodies can be places we can drink the water, we can eat the fish, we can swim in them. Those are all important things for humans. We also have another role as part of a larger consortium of other agencies and other biologists in helping document what's in our environment, in rivers and also prairies and all these other environments other biologists work in.
A lot of people think that there's a relationship between water quality and human health. There's a lot of studies out there that say that cancer rates are higher around streams that are degraded. So it's kind of a way to check human health as well. Everything we do in the land winds up in the stream. So if we can detect changes early enough, perhaps we can prevent human health problems.
Fieldwork, as the biologists call it, is done in the spring and summer when they can visit multiple sites and bring back samples. The cold winter months bring the lab into play. Here in the Water Quality Lab in Frankfort, they pore over their finds to discover what their snapshots have to tell them.
The lab work we do when we go out and collect samples, we bring samples back to the lab, and these samples, once they're back in the lab, are identified and quantified. Once that's done, we do some quality assurance and quality control to make sure our data is correct. But we put it into systems where other employees of Division of Water go back and decisions are made based on this data of water usage, how these waters will be used for human needs. So eventually it all goes back to resources that people need.
The science these biologists perform for the Wild Rivers program is important and even necessary for the people of Kentucky. But they consider more than the knowledge gained when they work. These people are drawn to what they do and worry about the rivers and streams in their care.
I do what I do because I love to interact with nature. I love to get out and see nature, and that's really my the basic reason I'm in the field for. But also I think we have an important role in helping understand the quality and the integrity of our rivers and streams in Kentucky. So that's a major part of what drives me to do what we do.
I love it. It's a great way to be outside and see nature firsthand. It's interesting to see all the species in the state. There are a lot of unique things about Kentucky's ecosystems that are not found anywhere else. The Southeast in general is a really unique place for aquatic animals. All these things make it a really good great place to be a biologist.
Everyone here it's a vocation for all of us as aquatic biologists. We are family-like because we travel in vehicles all the time. We eat breakfast, lunch, and supper with one another. We're always in the field under extreme conditions sometimes, extreme heat, rain, thunderstorms. You know, we depend on each other to stay safe. And because of that vocation, it's not a 9-to-5 job. We really care about what we're doing, and I just would like to know that people to know that how much we care and how much we're working, how hard we're working to try to protect aquatic resources, and hopefully the general public would be just as willing to help us protect the waterways too.
The Wild Rivers program has the ability to purchase land from willing landowners. It isn't easy to do, and some would ask why anyone would want to have their land purchased by the state.
Those are special people. And those are special people because they realize that that place is bigger than them. And they also realize that the many things that they've experienced on that land, perhaps on that reach of that wild river, are experiences that deserve to be shared with others. And that without taking this step, perhaps those experiences won't be possible. So those folks that cooperate with our programs have a longer vision than most. They're not short-sighted. They're looking with a longer lens, and we all benefit as a result of it.
Land is stability. It was the thing that nurtured us. My husband always farmed. He never had a paycheck from anywhere else. He grew up farming, and that's all he ever wanted to do. We just felt it just sort of enclosed us. It made us feel safe and secure. I really think he was in love with that land. All of the rest of his family, or most of his family, let's say, wanted to really farm row crops and stuff, but he loved the mountain land, and he valued that so much. He just loved the land for what the land was. He knew that no more land was being made, and he really liked that, and he wanted to protect it and preserve it. I was really relieved to see that the State Preserve was getting it, because they had the same vision for it that I did. They wanted to keep it pristine and clean, and they wanted to preserve it.
With the Burnett property, that's 1,000 acres that John and Karen Burnett put together over their entire lifetime of hard work in order to be able to farm the property, and also just as a place to go in and kind of get away from the world. So they spent 50-some years putting in 8 different tracts of land together to make that 1,000 acres that they sold us, and they didn't want to see that get broken up and subdivided and developed. They wanted to see that property protected in its natural state. That's what we can provide people. With the state, it takes time, as I'm sure everybody would realize, to acquire property just to get all the paperwork in line. So we can't offer anything as far as a next day closing on the property. What we can offer is that the way the property sits is the way that it'll remain, except for a few habitat modifications to actually boost the value for the endangered species, as well as just the normal wildlife that you'll see in an area.
It's fairly common regardless of who buys the property, that you will have a landowner, property's been in their hands for generations, and unfortunately with the way society is today, their children or their heirs just might not be interested in living there, but they want to see it protected. They don't want to see it developed. So we find a lot of people that actually financially, the state also can only pay appraised value on a piece of property. So oftentimes these sellers could get more money selling it to somebody else, but they make the decision to sell it to one of our partnering agencies and using Heritage Land Fund restrictions because they want to see it preserved. So even though they might not be around to enjoy it, they want to be able to make sure that their grandchildren have the opportunity to come and see it and enjoy it.
Being good stewards of the land doesn't take all that much. If someone wants to help preserve even a tiny bit of one of these wild and beautiful places, it's easy to do.
The Heritage Land Conservation Fund acquires property. We're in the acquisition and land management business, basically. In Wild Rivers, all the property Kentucky Wild Rivers owns, we have funded, every acre of it. We get a big chunk of our money from the sale of Nature's Finest license plates. When people buy those plates at their county clerk, it costs $10 extra. All that money goes towards preserving and protecting and managing these properties, every bit of it. So we don't get your income tax dollars to do this. We get from multiple sources, but that's a way that you can voluntarily help protect these areas, is just when you register your vehicle, get one of those nature plates.
So when you see those nature plates out on the road, and they are beautiful in and of themselves, I hope they are a reminder to you of that special place near your home, that special natural area that you hold dear, that you take advantage of and visit and hike and bird watch and get out in nature. But I also hope it reminds you that you have a responsibility, that we each have a responsibility to make our environment all it can be, and that this is one of those examples where individuals can make a difference.
Our connection to the wild places in our Commonwealth take many forms, from the physical to the spiritual, and they hold rewards for anyone who looks for them.
Well, wild places, I think, rejuvenate people. A lot of people like to go to wild places and just breathe. Some people think that God hears you better when you're in a wild place. And maybe it's something to do with the human soul. It's just nice to walk outside and look around and maybe not hear road noise. Maybe not hear airplane go or a chainsaw or a lawnmower. It's just nice to know that that they're there.
These rivers are our home, and these are the places that some of us first maybe learned how to swim. Maybe it's the place we caught our first fish, the first time we went boating. Perhaps it was even a little bit more spiritual, as the song says. Maybe we came down to the river to pray. Maybe it was the place where you were baptized.
Oh, children, let's go down, come on down. Oh, children, let's go down to the river to pray. Oh, people, let's go down, come on down. Oh, people, let's go down to the river to pray. Oh, brothers, down to the river to pray. Sisters, down to the river to pray.
So rivers represent much more than just aesthetic or beautiful places that we appreciate as we drive by the road and then they're gone.
Most people, these are off the beaten path. Most people are driving right past them, don't know they exist until you get out of your car and walk sometimes 10 steps at Martin's Fort and you see this stream that looks like it should be on the cover of National Geographic that you're going to fly right past in your car if you're checking your cell phone instead of looking around to see what's around you.
The secret of discovery, I think, is keeping an open mind and letting curiosity grow like a child's curiosity. I love being out in nature with young children, particularly preschool to first, second, third graders, and just to see nature through their eyes, to see nature through the eyes of a child. reminds us of how connected we are, no matter what our age is, to the wild places around us.
The reason we do this is not to give the impression that these are going to be areas that people can't use. We want to have these areas set in place to where they're set to a high recreational use, and we encourage people to get out on these rivers and see them firsthand for themselves. And even if you don't get out and recreate in these rivers, it's important to have places that we minimize our footprints, because they have a right to exist in themselves. We need to have places as a society that we can make a little bit of room for these places in our lives. We're not so busy and so important that we can't have areas that just deserve to exist on their own.
So I just recommend that people seek out these places. They're there. Some people are fortunate enough to own a slice of that natural heritage, but most people are not. And that's again another reason why programs like the Kentucky Heritage Land Fund and the Wild Rivers program are so important. That places are being preserved that the public can have access to. That you don't have to own land on a river to be able to enjoy and participate in that natural heritage. You can actually see it because it's been protected. You can float down the river. There's lots of opportunities for you to get out and enjoy these natural resources if you just decide to do it.
The wild rivers of Kentucky aren't a secret. They're only waiting to be discovered by a citizenry who simply need to be reminded that it's there.